Hello, humans. This is M and V, and this is the Bearded Ladies channel where we talk about random things a little too deeply. But hopefully you'll enjoy the ride. So today, I had initially wanted to talk about anorexia and kind of like the weird sides to it. But I realized that the more I thought about the video that inspired this, which was Inside the Sick World of Anorexia Fetishism by Herbs and Altars on YouTube, I realized that I was less shocked about the anorexia itself and more so of the fetishizing of a mental illness. And so that's what I kind of want to touch on today. So this topic idea had been building over a couple of weeks. The first video I had watched was the one that I referred to earlier, but there was another one that had come up kind of like the universe telling me to take this topic. I don't know if any of you know about the Arcane, which is a new series on Netflix, but I am fully enjoying it. But there's a character on there, her name is Jinx, that was eerily too similar to like Harlequin from the Suicide Squad. And you know, I was scrolling through YouTube and there was a video that popped up of Who Did Crazy Better by Sini. I don't know how to say his YouTube channel, but you know, piqued my interest because it was Arcane. And there was something that he touched on as well that I thought was interesting, in that when he was talking about the Harley Quinn character, he was referring to it playing more into the sexiness of mental illness. Yeah, I mean, I was a little weirded out by it too, but I kind of got what he meant, right? Like in Hollywood, there is this kind of trope where it's like the sexy, crazy girl, if you will. Have you noticed this like trope, V?
Yeah, there is a show called How I Met Your Mother. I don't know if you know that one. It's kind of old now, but they have this diagram, like a diagram, and it says the hotter she is, the crazier she is. So if she's really hot, she's really crazy. If she's not hot, she's not that crazy. That's where I first heard of it.
Yeah, but I mean, taking it to the like extreme, right? Of like, if someone has a mental illness, isn't it strange then for someone to be attracted or almost to fetishize that difficulty, that struggle?
Definitely.
And it got me thinking, well, if, you know, anorexia is a mental illness, then shouldn't the fetishism of anorexia be a mental illness as well?
So kind of like people who are sex addicts, and then you have voyeurs.
Wait, one more time?
Oh, so it's kind of like when you have people who are sex addicts, but then you also have people who are voyeurs who like to watch other people have sex. Like both ends of the spectrum are like sex. I mean, what call not mental illnesses. Actually, yes, I think voyeurism is a mental illness now.
I mean, so when I was looking it up and researching it, I found like two sources that referred to fetishes if they do not harm other people or do not put the person that has the fetish in distress. It's fine, pretty much. However, if it causes harm to other people, willing or unwilling, then it's called a paraphilic disorder or a fetishistic disorder. All new words to me. I had to look this up. So, I mean, for your example, right? I guess the voyeur, if they know the other person is a sex addict, I guess then yes, their fetishism would be a mental illness, fetishistic disorder.
So if they, what do you mean if they knew the other person was a sex? Like if they were watching the other person have sex?
So for that one, it's a little unclear, right? Because the person may not know that the other person is a sex addict, and that's something they're struggling with, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, if they knew about it, but
Mm-hmm.
still fed into their disorder, then
Mm-hmm.
their fetish itself is fetishistic.
Okay,
Mm.
I'm
So,
getting it.
so for example, one that I kind of regret kind of laughing at when I was younger was like the people that are obese and are struggling with eating, and then feeders.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think thinking about it now, it seems really scary that these guys, both on like the anorexia fetishism scale and like the feeder scale, are kind of like, for lack of a better word, feeding into these
Mm-hmm.
ladies, usually ladies,
Mm-hmm.
struggle. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. I don't know. Had you heard about those two?
I was aware of them. Like, there's this one show I watched where the idea of beauty is very different. This girl used to be really skinny, and then she got engaged, and basically, what happens during the engagement process is they have to make the girl fat. So all
Mm.
she does, she's not allowed to leave for a lot of the time. She has to sit there and drink goat's milk and eat food just so she can get fat. So that on her marriage day, she's presented as a fat lady. So that
Mm.
was kind of my feeders, I guess, my first introduction to feeders. And I remember the other girl was saying it's interesting that in the U.S. we're trying to be skinny. That's the ultimate goal is to be skinny, but
Mm.
there is to be fat.
And I think that like brings in kind of a gray area, right? Because it's like for the culture, it's for
Mm-hmm.
a period of time that you're feeding a woman into, being bigger for her wedding, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if it were to be continued and it would cause harm to her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if she was getting to the point where she was unable to move, that it was causing health problems for her,
Mm-hmm.
then it would be a fetishistic disorder, wouldn't it?
I think in that culture it would not be because I guess they have a different view of it. But that there was one point where the guy said the lady who was hosting the show was interviewing a gentleman, and she was saying, "When is a girl too big?" And like you said, uh,
Mm-hmm.
one guy said, "When she can't move anymore, she's too big." They want them
Mm.
big, they don't want them that big. So,
Mm. Yeah, they
but
still they still need stuff to get done.
yeah, exactly.
That sounds messed up.
Yeah, no, because the dudes, if you looked at them, they were all skinny.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very different seeing the men having to be skinny, and all this kind of is on women.
Mm.
Anorexia, although there are guys who have it, for example, most of it falls on women. So I don't know. I think some of these things we're noticing it more, and I guess, but we're using these specific examples, so
Mm-hmm.
it's a little different depending on what disorder you're talking about. The demographics would definitely be different. So it's kind of hard to say, but I guess in this case, for me, it wouldn't seem totally fetishistic disorder for the girl to be so big she can't move.
But
I don't want
like
to say
to the
that.
point to not move though, isn't that like a little bit?
I would say it's a disorder, but I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say it's fetishistic. Now, if the guy
Mm.
really liked her so big that she couldn't move, then I would say it's a fetish.
Um, and this is kind of where I was a little confused in my research, right? Because when they talk about fetish, they can refer to something that's sexual or something that's obsessive. So I had
Yeah.
always been under the impression that it was always sexual, right?
Mm-hmm.
But apparently for like a lot of people, it could just be something that they're really focused on. something that's like a part of their life that's like almost obsessive.
Yeah, so I kind of think of BDSM. You have some people that are really high in places of power, such as maybe the government or CEOs of companies. Like, for example, like the book 50 Shades of Grey. You have people in high power who maybe they are sexually into it as well, but it's also a part of their lifestyle. Like, you can't separate, I mean, unless they keep it a secret, you can't separate them from the BDSM. It's who they are. The lifestyle of BDSM is more than just sexuality, although it's definitely sexual. It has to do with things such as trust. It has to do with things such as masculinity and femininity. It has to do with things, and all in between that too, not just those two polarities by themselves. But that's just another thing where it can be, BDSM is a fetish, I think. But it
Yeah,
also
and
ranges as far as non-sexual.
yeah, and I agree with all of that. And I think most of the time with the BDSM community, because there are so many clear rules on consent and finding ways to treat others, both submissives and dominants, it doesn't lean into like a disorder, as far as my understanding of what they gave as examples or reasons why it would become a mental illness. So, and kind of to back up a little bit, something you touched on by bringing up a culture. So there was another article that I saw where they mentioned that societies will bring up an expectation and their ideas of mental health will change with the society. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess where I haven't researched enough to be completely sure of this, but it's a question that kind of popped up in my head, is that modern therapists, are they working to figure out what's normal for human beings and their brain functions and how they interact with each other? Are they just trying to get to that kind of universal umbrella? Or are they just reflecting what society expects people to behave like?
So whether they're trying to explore people versus what they expect of people.
More so like, I don't know if I'm explaining it very well. Are therapists only being influenced by what society expects is good? Or are they finding what broadly humans are, how humans are supposed to be, or like what's normal for humans?
What they're supposed to be or what's normal for them.
Kind, yes.
Okay, that's, I want to make sure I heard that correctly. So it's what they want to be or what's good for them. I can't answer that, but I can tell you what I would like the answer to be.
Yeah.
I would like the answer to be that there is, and this is not the full answer because I know there's anomalies, either at the end of the bell curve, spectrum and all that. But within the main part of the bell curve, there is very few things that are bad about humans and what's bad for us to do. Because whenever you tell a kid to, for example, you tell a kid that it's bad to hit people, for example, I don't know, I'm just pulling out the air at this point, but that might be true, and it's bad to hit people for the most part, but there will be situations in which hitting a person is very good. Someone's coming at you about to fight, you need to learn how to hit. If you're told your whole life you shouldn't hit, I think it's more so we should redirect people into where these habits of what we call bad habits. We should redirect them into showing them where they're bad habits can actually be used for good. Because I believe that there's a light side and a dark side to everything. You get a kid who's a straight A student all the way up until 12th grade. That's great for him. Sorry, Petra's on trying to jump on my lap. That's great for them, but how they got there, that might be their downfall once they hit college. Because I know for me, when I was in college, or no, excuse me, when I was in K through 12, I could ride through school no problem. The assignments, I wouldn't say they were all easy, but school was easy to me. I'll put it like that. But when I hit college, it was a whole new ballgame. Not community college, actual university, whole new ballgame. Had someone prepared me for that and said, excuse me, I just said my own name. So, K through 12 is going to be one way, but university is going to be different. If someone would have brought that out to me, then I would have, been able to play both sides. That's just an example. I think psychology should not try to tell people to be good or to tell them what they should be. I think they should say, this is who you are already. Let us find a way to get you into a good lighting, or let's place you in a way that what your gifts are, you can do them well in this arena or something like that.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you in like a specific example kind of sense. And like in a broader sense, I would hope that the study of mental illnesses, or even like just mental health in general, is more of just understanding the human mind and what is normal for it and how to help if anything goes wrong. Right?
Yeah.
Or by wrong, I mean like anything that's like keeping you from being able to live your best life.
That is very true. That is very true. I like what you put that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So then this brings me to another article that I read that I was feeling a little uneasy reading because it was like a sensitive topic. Pretty much the title was, is pedophilia a fetish or a mental illness?
Is pedophilia a fetish?
Or a mental illness?
Oh, okay.
And I mean, when I was reading the article, I think the person was trying to be fair as much as like Americans can be when talking about this, because we're really sensitive to this topic. But the ending really got me in that they recognized that they didn't say either or. They said it wasn't a fetish because you would be harming someone if you acted on it. But they refused to call it a mental illness because their words were they don't want to give sympathy for such a situation. And I mean, I guess that kind of struck me in that if you put a label of mental illness on it, does that automatically mean that we can only give sympathy for the person that is struggling with it? Can there not be an in-between where we disavow the actions but still understand the struggle?
I think it's possible. It makes me think about other cultures too. Like, I don't have one in mind in particular, but I remembered reading, and this was typically this happens a lot with the men in society. For example, the Shinto religion. I learned this because I thought it was fun to read about what Shinto is about. Apparently, what you can't do is have sex with a woman. So what they said was, we're going to have sex with boys because boys are not women. So it's okay to have sex with boys. And this is not the only religion that had that. There's another one.
Yeah,
Actually, there's
wasn't
the
there also in
Amish.
like, oh, the Amish?
So the Amish community, what I've heard from them is bestiality is their thing. So
Oh.
because they can't have sex with other women and definitely not other men, they will consume themselves with bestiality. So different cultures will do different things,
Mm.
and I don't think it fully makes it's hard for me to say that they're not bad people because I'm like I have my own personal views. I think it's wrong. But
Mm.
they do exist. So
Yeah, and I think again that kind of goes back to what is the mental health study? Like,
mhm.
is it just society deeming what is normal, or are we actually going to get this broad umbrella of, like, is it what is okay and what is not okay for the health of all humans,
Yeah.
irrelevant of the society?
Yeah. Good circle back around.
Mm.
Do you believe that okay, so we have so many cultures around the world. We have so many dead cultures, we have new cultures, we have in between cultures. Do you think that it's possible for all humans to have a standard set of mental health, or do you think it's different based on culture? Like it has to be based on culture. Do you think we all have a set bar?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I
Yeah.
mean, I think there's ideals that possibly we can discover,
Mm-hmm.
like for mental health. I don't think mental health is at that point where we've figured out like the broad umbrella, which is like the standard for all humans. So I can't really say for sure. I think if society, in a hypothetical world, if society were to get to a point where we already have an understanding of like mental health that is good for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
I think for societies, if it is possible, we would try to change, right? Like I understand that not everybody, not every culture, not every society has the access to resources to be the ideal and can only do the best of with what they have. And there
Mm-hmm.
are some certain situations where like I don't understand the culture well enough and why that had adapted or been brought into the society. You know what I mean? Or
Mm-hmm.
how it plays with other features within that society.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think we would try to change, but keep in mind that not every society is going to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That I think there's almost like a certain level of acceptability as far as like something being slightly unhealthy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I think it's impossible
Mm.
because we have been bred for such a long. I mean, that times are changing now because of globalism, but before globalism, which is a new construct, we were all, for the most part, stuck in small towns, or we all had our groups and we knew who was who and what was what, and we had those neighbors that we were fighting with, and then we had those people who we were good with, and then there was just us and our people. I mean, it's still like that today in many parts of the world. I think the hard part is trying to, for lack of a better term, breed out all the bad stuff for mental
Mm.
health that may have been ingrained in their cultures, for example, or even in our own culture. We've got blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's what makes it impossible. Is just there's too much history within our DNA as well as within our cultures around the world. I'm thinking like people in the Amazons, people in the
Mm.
Western world, the Eastern world, Africa. There's no people in the North or South Pole, but if there were, I'd say them too. Um, I think it's very difficult. I think we can try hard. And if we were to come to a place where we could figure out what good mental health is for all the people in our group, aka the USA,
Mm,
there would be blind spots to it, and there would be people who could from other cultures who would look at it and say, "You see the U.S., you don't want to be like those people." I think
mm,
of like those utopia or dystopia movies where like everybody is bred to be perfect, and they're
mm,
bred to have certain genes taken out that they don't want, such as health genes. And we're doing it all in the name of science to have healthy, longer lasting lives. But then what about those other diseases, and what about those people who were born naturally? Or, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Kind of
Mm.
how I think of it.
And I think, well, I guess then we're trying to like split between, um, I guess, genetic predispositions of personality versus, general mental health of humans,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. I just don't want it to be like, so say someone is born naturally and they do have a mental health issue,
Mm-hmm.
or at least they're diagnosed as having a mental health issue. I'll put it that way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that child to ever feel less than or feel like they can never be like the others until they get that mental illness managed.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not fun being that kid or feeling like that kid. Um, I would hope that they would try to integrate the kid to be with the others as quickly as possible within safety reasons. Because sometimes some people can't control themselves depending on what mental health illness they have. You have people who are kind of like different versions of Tourette's, for example. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they can't always control themselves. Sometimes they
Yeah.
hurt themselves or other people, but not intentionally. So I'm going off on a long tangent in the wrong direction. But
This is really interesting in that, like, I agree that I wouldn't want to be part of a society that idolizes perfection.
yeah.
And I would hope, and I would almost expect, if there was this hypothetical world where mental health had created a general umbrella of what are some general standards, that it
Mm.
wouldn't demonize those that didn't fit that standard, and that it would have a way to help. But something that I thought of when you were talking about other countries, or other societies and like groups that would be like, oh, don't be like America, they're weird. It made me wonder, say first world countries were able to find this kind of umbrella of mental health. If we were to start to impose that on other countries, would that not be, I don't know, the word would be like, not colonistic, but like imperialistic?
I always think of conquistadors.
But I mean, like, even if we were to find this like umbrella ideology, right? And
yeah.
we were like, oh, we have discovered what's mentally healthy. Hey, other country, you should do this because this is mentally healthy. I
Mm-hmm.
think from the perspective of them, they'd be like, oh God, we're being taken over by weirdos.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Yep.
what I mean? And I
Shiny
think
white suits.
mm, it would almost become unhealthy of us to impose the expectations on other societies, I think.
No, I agree. That's the point I was trying to make. And
Oh,
but
okay, I'm
I
sorry.
rambled on. I rambled on. But that I
I'm
meant
sorry I
exactly
flew over
that.
my
No, it's okay. Yeah, at least
head.
we're eye to eye. So
But I mean, is there any topic that you wanted to touch on, like because of not topic? Any idea you wanted to bring up via this topic before we stop?
um well, I think my notes are kind of like not having anything to do with this conversation. Let me look over it real quick.
Okay.
Uh, so basically, my notes were on. For those of you who don't know, Teal Swan, who is a mental health professional. Well, I don't know if I want to say mental health professional. That's not her exact title. It's something else. Like it doesn't matter. The point is, she works with mental health,
Mm-hmm.
and she does it intuitively. So she works in holistic ways blah blah blah. So not your stereotypical doctor, but she does help with mental health illness. One stigma that she was kind of caught up for, and there's a mini documentary on it, was for the case of suicide. So speaking about another term of mental health illness, which is how I tied it in. Um, People were accusing her of condoning suicide and for not helping people at all. I beg to differ personally. I think that the video that she put on suicide was very helpful, but not everyone saw it that way. For example, she told you to imagine your death and also imagine the aftermath of your death. So, and then it's just a small imagination thing. But the thing is, some people would say that that's going too far. Why would you encourage them to imagine their death? Because this is just going to encourage them one step further to be there. Unfortunately, she had two people who committed suicide who allegedly watched her videos, and they were saying it's your videos that did it. You made them imagine two people out of how many followers, maybe more, I don't know, but at least at the time of the video, it was two people. So she ended up having to put out a statement about her stance on suicide, and she said, I am strongly against it. However, people have free will, and if it helps them to imagine their own suicide, it'll alleviate pressure off of most people, which is why she did it. So the question was, should she be held responsible for the deaths that occurred from people who were watching her videos? And is suicide really bad? Because according to her video, it's just a reset button. If I don't know if it's true, but according to the video, suicide actually happened as a result of I want to say medieval times or the times of the Romans. Basically, there are a bunch of people who owed money back to the king, and so they said, I don't have enough money to give to the king, I'm just going to kill myself. And so eventually they made it illegal to kill yourself because you have to pay back your debt to the king. You have to pay your taxes and all that stuff. That's what her video said. I haven't fact checked it, but that's just where it's coming from. I think it's a pretty cool story. So yeah, that's the origins of suicide in the Western culture, I should say. That thing.
Yeah, and to kind of tie it in with what we were talking about, I guess there'd be two parts in that. One, recently there's been an upswing in the media of romanticizing suicide, which I would argue is a lot more harmful, right? Yeah. And then two is that the idea of when is it okay for suicide or understandable or allowable for suicide to exist. I think there was one case in the Netherlands that there was a young woman, I think like 15 years old, who, I may be quoting this wrong, but there was a system that allowed for suicide, but because she was so young, there was a debate on whether they would allow her to. And man, it's really such like a gray area, right? Of like the human mind. How much are we like just unable to know for sure is normal, and what can we actually help with? You know what I mean? So I guess that's all to say is like, man, the human mind's complex. New discovery here on MNG. Yep. Humans, they're weird. Right. But anyway, thank you guys for listening in and tuning in. Please continue the conversation in the comments down below. That'd be really interesting. I know we talked quite a bit about a lot of stuff and jumped around, but it's all for the shenanigans.
Yeah, you know you like it.
All right. Anyway, all right.